So the other day we went over my top 5 favourite bosses from Dark Souls 1, and today we're going to be looking at my 5 nominations for the worst bosses in Dark Souls 1. As always, this is just my own personal opinion. If you disagree, let me know in the comment section, and timestamps exist down below to find a specific boss. Now with that being said, let's get into it. It really does pain me putting the Centipede Demon on this list, because I can see through the cracks the glimmer of a really good boss fight, but unfortunately, he just didn't receive enough time in the oven. You know, the second half of Dark Souls 1 was rushed, and unfortunately this boss, along with the area, would have been hit, but and greatly affected by that. So, the main issue with this fight is not the boss itself, as, to be honest, aside from a few stupid attacks like the jump, which he spams quite often, I don't think there's that many issues with the boss, and I like the fact that you can cut off his tail to get the orange charred ring. The problem I have is just the camera, especially if you're underneath this guy, the camera is really annoying. Not to mention the boss itself is also quite janky. Whenever he spams his jumps, you can get him out of bounds. Really, it's just a bit of an annoying fight where I really do think that, if it had more time in the oven, it would be one of the best boss fights in the game. It's kind of the Old Iron King in Dark Souls 2, but better in my opinion, but still not great, and it deserves to be on the list. The Capra Demon, in my opinion, is a bit overhated, as a lot of people would put this guy at number 1 or number 2. I don't think he's that bad, however I can agree that objectively he is a pretty bad boss fight, in terms of his design, and it's mainly due to his arena. It's just far too small for taking on multiple opponents. And yes, I did say multiple opponents, as this guy has 2 dog pets that will accompany him in the fight. And it really makes the opening 5 seconds of the boss in particular terrible, as the 2 dogs run up to you and stun lock you, and then this guy comes in and gets a clean one-shot. As you gotta keep in mind, when it comes to the early game bosses, sure he doesn't have a lot of health, however his damage is significantly greater even when wearing heavy armor, as shown, in these clips here. But the problem that I have is, again, if you wear heavy armor, the dogs are very easy to kill, and then you're left with this guy where he hasn't got a very complicated moveset. The main difficulty in this fight just comes from the small arena. Everything else is just not that difficult, unfortunately, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, as again, a lot of people do struggle with this boss, especially with, again, as I said, the opening 5 to 10 seconds where all 3 foes jump you at once. But I think just if the area was bigger, you took away the dogs and maybe gave him a bit more of an interesting moveset, it could have been fun, but as it is, it's just so small of an arena and it's not very good designed, and it comes in at the number 4 spot. If you've ever fought this guy, you know exactly why he's on the list. He's just pathetically easy. Sure, his doppelgangers do add a bit of a challenge to the fight, but why bother going for them when you can kill the boss in 2 or 3 hits regardless of your build? Now, coming and fighting this guy early in the game does pose significantly more of a challenge, I'm not gonna lie, but I mean, just look at the damage you see here. I killed the boss in 5 fucking hits. It's really not that big of an issue. He doesn't even take me to half health. This guy is just pathetically easy, and the only good thing about him is he gives you the Rite of Kindling, which is a fantastic item. But other than that, this guy sucks, we all know it, let's just move on. It's such a shame that the fight of the Moonlight Butterfly is as terrible as it is, because atmosphere, design, and, music, or the OST rather, is top notch. I mean, you can listen to it here, it's absolutely, music to my ears, no pun intended. However, it's such a shame that the fight itself is complete and utter ass, where the Centipede Demon and the Capra Demon, you were relegated to a tiny ass arena. This is the smallest arena in terms of width, I mean, look at it, it's like a fucking bridge, you can see it here, and you're just at the mercy of this guy. And the thing that I really dislike about this fight most is just the imbalance between builds. If you're fighting this guy as a melee build, you're essentially just taking this guy's punishment until he comes into land, and then you can beat the crap out of him. But if you haven't got a very good melee weapon, you are in for one of the longest fights in the main game. However, flip the coin, if you bring magic or range to this fight, you can kill him in like 10 seconds. So this guy is just far too imbalanced when it comes to designs. You know, if you bring range or magic, this guy is your bitch. If you're bringing, you know, melee or anything like that, you are his bitch. And I just hate it for that reason, you know. It's either pathetically easy or ridiculously boring, and that is not something that I want in my Dark Souls bosses. And it comes in at the number 2 spot, just narrowly missing the number 1 spot, because I think you all know by now which boss deserves that honor. Today's honourable mention goes to Gravelord Nito. I think the fight itself is actually pretty good and the design is awesome, but with that being said, it is a little disappointing given how terrible the area was. I was expecting a really good fight against the Lord of Skeletons, and in reality it's just a gank fest with the boss killing his own freaking minions and him being ridiculously easy to kill. Again, he had a lot of potential, but he didn't live up to the hype in my opinion, and he is the honourable mention on today's list. Yeah, it should come as no surprise that the Bed of Chaos is the worst boss in Dark Souls 1. I mean, there really isn't much to do in this fight. You just hit 2 things, then you run into the boss and, you know, instantly kill its weak spot. However, everything in between that is just horrible. The tree branches attack way too frequently and they can knock you back really far, which is really annoying when you factor in that the floor is constantly crumbling underneath you, meaning that you die more times to gravity in this fight than the actual boss. It's such a shame as well when you factor in just how relevant this character is in the lore of Dark Souls 1, being the Chaos Witch that tried preserving the flame, but it ended up creating the Chaos Flame, resulting in pretty much everything going wrong in the world. However, it's such a shame that such an important character is relegated to such a shit but poorly designed boss fight. I don't enjoy this fight much at all. The run back is horrible, the music is good I guess, and the boss arena's not too bad, but again, like, you just die to gravity so many times, so even though it's aesthetically pleasing, the fight just doesn't play well at all, and it's by far the worst boss in the game in my opinion.